Well, there I should say that although on my account meaningful work is an objective good, it nevertheless can be diverse and individualized in different ways in different lives. So you might find a particular occupation fulfilling for several years and then outgrow it. And in order to further challenge and develop as a person, you might need to move to another kind of occupation. Or you might find that because you're burnt out in your job, you're simply not communicating, you're not contributing to your community in such a valuable way as you were when you were first in the job and very excited about it. So no doubt there is a kind of personalized factor in determining what meaningful work is. For the individual, you'll have to look at your own set of talents and circumstances, gifts, proclivities, and so forth, in order to determine what choice of work will be meaningful for you. Yes?
I'm worried about how you define work itself.
Mm-hmm.
I heard you just say occupation. The whole hour I've been wanting to know, having just spent a while changing diapers and rocking babies, is that considered work? Is the band that I play in on Saturday night work? Especially if I don't have any earning job, that I spend my whole life in my garage painting?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent philosophical question. What is work? And certainly it's difficult to define work. I would argue that it's difficult to define work because work does not have any kind of a singular essence. But rather, the concept of work is like a Wittgensteinian family resemblance concept, where you have a kind of loose association of activities that you could rightly call work, but no singular defining essence that underlies all of them and clearly separates them from non-work. Now, I tended to use the word work in the talk because I'm influenced by the German philosopher Hannah Arendt, who operates with an important distinction between labor and work. And labor is the kind of cyclical, repetitious activity necessary to sustain life that you were referring to, like changing diapers and so forth, where work in the German sense has more of a connotation of the work of an artisan. Work in this sense often produces something durable and is simultaneously self-expressive. So in one sense, there is an important distinction between labor and work. But thinking about it very broadly, certainly changing diapers is work in a loose sense. Fundamental to work, if there is anything fundamental, is a certain kind of effort and a certain goal-directedness. Beyond that, it's difficult to identify a defining essence of work. For instance, you might immediately be inclined to think of work as other-directed. You know, you're performing something for the needs and desires of other people. Yet, as our students know, when they're writing their term papers, they're working. And yet, primarily, the object of the work is their own intellectual and moral development. So in that respect, work can be self-directed. That is to say, you as the worker can be the primary beneficiary of the work. Work is often paid, but not all work is paid, as with the labor in the home. Work tends to be identified as a contribution to the needs of others, and thus you're paid for it. But in working on your own garden, you're working, and yet you're not contributing something necessarily for other people. So in that regard, defining work is a messy business. And ultimately, I do not think there is a singular defining essence of work that you can find, but it is clearly, it's closely associated with a kind of goal-directedness, and it tends to be, for that reason, opposed to both play and leisure and to rest and relaxation. And that's basically the best I can do in defining work. Yes?
Kind of along those lines then, in your point of view, do you think that kind of extra professional work like that is objectively valuable to human flourishing you're talking about?
Professional work, you said?
Outside of work, outside of your job.
Oh, yes. Yeah, often one will go outside of a paid occupation in order to do some work, in order to either contribute to a community, to feel valued by that community, to have something to do, to lend structure to one's life, to develop one's capacities, to express one's humanity, and so forth. This is why people volunteer in their communities, for instance, or continue to work past their retirement when they no longer need to work. Yes, in the red?
In your claim that meaningful work is not available to everyone, are you simply making a statement of the current state of society, or are you making a stronger claim that it would be practically impossible to have a state in which meaningful work is available?
Right. I'm working with a distinction between a utopia on the one hand, where you can imagine that meaningful work would be available to everyone, perhaps through some kind of a Marxist scheme, or because robots will come along and do all of the meaningless work for us, or because time-saving devices will keep us from having to change the diapers and so forth. In a utopia, meaningful work is available for everyone because there are non-people to do the dirty work. But outside of a utopia, not everyone will have meaningful work. And that clearly includes the present day with our present technologies, and so far into the future as one can really think about social human structures. Yes?
I want to just say that on the one hand, I really do agree that there's management and social structures out there that make certain jobs oppressive and abusive. I guess I'm really curious as to what objective occupations you're actually claiming are intrinsically meaningless. Because it does seem to me to be a social oddity to say that CEOs and scholarly researchers have more meaningful jobs than trash picker-uppers and, wall painters and people who take care of our homes and streets. Yet at the same time, we look down on them as sort of, our fast food workers, everyone doing basic service jobs is just sort of menial, non-meaningful stuff. And we look up to the heads of society as the bastions of hope and meaningful labor. And at the same time, it seems to me just be a social, artificial form of respect. Like we could just learn to respect each other and give each other respect in our occupations that are actually useful.
Yeah. In many occupations, one might not find respect from the work itself, but have to claim a certain kind of respect or dignity of the person that exists in spite of the work. But no doubt you can imagine that many forms of work would lie somewhere in the middle of a continuum of labor meaningfulness. And on the one hand, you can imagine someone who is a slave, who has little opportunity to exercise autonomy and freedom in the choice of work, and then within the work have little choice or decision-making about how the work is done. That work might also not express the worker's capacities or human abilities. It would be drudgery, it might be dishonorable, even if it contributes to a community. So you might imagine the kind of work that a slave does as something that is quintessentially meaningless. And on the other hand, something like an architect might embody meaningful work in the respect not only of producing something fantastically enduring, but also doing something self-expressive that will be appreciated by other people, and in turn promote the development and self-respect of the worker. So there are sort of paradigmatic examples, but most work will lie somewhere in between because it will embody some but not all characteristics of meaningful work. Yes, a follow-up question?
I just want to point out that a slave is a social construct, not an intrinsic occupation. I mean, what actual occupations?
Well, there are some people who are forced into work, and that's what I mean by a slave.
That's a social construct. We're talking about management, oppressing people. But what we're talking about are the actual jobs that people can do. Why can't we find respect and sort of meaningfulness in whatever occupations that society needs? And if we can't find that, we just shouldn't do those occupations.
Right. So, for instance, once in a while you can find someone who performs the work of a bathroom attendant where the attendant has no other function in the job other than to provide towels for people who come into the restroom and to offer lotions and stuff. And that's really a bullshit, meaningless job in the respect that it's not necessary. People can go into bathrooms and figure out on their own that they can use the hand towels and the lotions and so forth. And that occupation is meaningless in the respect that it's not necessary, it doesn't truly contribute to a community, it really just serves the function of allowing other people to feel better about themselves.